Hello everyone. The topic for today is algebraic relationships rules. Right now I want you to pause the video so you can copy down your notes and then resume when you're ready. In today's lesson, we're going to be figuring out what the rule is, which was the middle column in the lesson on algebraic relationships tables. So we're given the input, we're given the output, and we have to figure out what's happening to the input to get to the output. So the position is always going to be the x term, and the value of term is going to be the y. You could also say the position is the input, and the value of term is the output. So first we need to look at the position and find out what's happening to that position to get to the value of term underneath it. So we could be adding, we could be subtracting, we could be multiplying, we could be dividing. All of those operations could happen. We need to figure out which one is happening. So if we start at 1 and we get to 7, well, that means that we either had to add or multiply because it got bigger. So if we look at 1, well, we could possibly add 6, or we could multiply that by 7. Both of those would give us 7. Well, if we go to the input 2, or the position 2, the second position, well, looking at whether or not we added 6 or multiplied 7, we need to figure out which one of those happens to get from 2 to 14. Well, 2 plus 6 is 8. However, 2 times 7 is 14. So right there, that tells us that our rule would be that we are multiplying the position by 7. So to write that rule, it would look like 7 times x. That would be our answer for the rule. To check it, we can plug in any of the position values, so 1, 2, 3, or 4, to see if it works. It's got to work for the entire table. 1 times 7 is 7, 2 times 7 is 14, 3 times 7 is 21, 4 times 7 is 28. So there's our rule for this example. Next, we have a sequence, which looks like this. All those numbers in a row like that, separated by commas, that's called a sequence. If we were to put the sequence into a table, it would look like this table that you can see on the screen. However, you're usually not going to have that table provided. You can create one off to the side or on a separate piece of paper if you would like, but that is something that you will have to do on your own. It won't be provided. You'll just have the sequence. So we have to find the rule. So much like we did before, we have to figure out how we get from 1 to 12. So 1 is the input, 12 is the output. Well, there are two ways that we could do that. One of them is to add 11, or we could multiply by 12. So next we look at the 2 and the 13. Well, if we add 11 to 2, that means that we would get 13. However, if we multiply 2 by 12, that gives us 24. Well, that's not the second position in the term, or it's not the second number in that table for the output value, so that can't work. So we're adding 11 to the position number, so our rule would be x plus 11. Here's an example of something that you would see on a homework assignment. It says use words and symbols to describe the value of each term in relation to its position. Then determine the value of the 10th term in the sequence. So what that means is we have to find the rule, we have to use a description for what's happening in the rule, and we have to find the 10th term, which is when the position or the input is 10. So again, we're looking at the first set of numbers. So we have 2 and 9. So to get from 2 to 9, we could either add 7, or we could multiply by a fraction, which would be 4 1/2. Well, when we add 7 to 3, we get 10, but when we multiply 3 by 4 1/2, we do not get 10, so that can't be the rule. So we have a rule of x plus 7. I always recommend finding the rule first because it makes the description easier, because you're telling using the rule, you can describe what's happening to the position. So in this case, we are adding 7 to the position. That would be our description. The 10th term, well, that is when we plug in a 10 for x. So 10 plus 7 is 17, so 17 is the 10th term in this sequence. Using all of that information, I want you to answer this question, or these 3 questions, if you will, meaning I want you to write a description for what's happening in this table. I want you to write the rule for what's happening in this table, and I want you to give me the 15th term in this sequence. And I also want you to answer these questions. So if we have a sequence here, how do we find the next term? So whatever would come after 13. And then I want to know the next 2 terms. So the number after 13 in this sequence, and then the number after that. Bring those answers along with any questions that you may have to class tomorrow.